said prompts me to ask you this. Do you think having officers who actually live in the community they actually service would have a better impact on how they deal with civilians who need help, who needs actual policing? For example, if I lived in Inverary and I go and I police Parkland, I may not understand that demographic well enough. And when I pull someone over from Parkland, I may operate off of the mindset or the aptitude of Inverary. But do you think that if I were to police in the area or the vicinity that I live in, that I would have a better result, or police officers would have a better result of how they treat civilians? What's your take on that, especially speaking from a psychological standpoint?
You know, I don't know if it will make them, or if it creates a situation where they're better police officers because they're in that city. So I'm on the fence with this, because I think you can live in a different city and police another city and still have kindness and compassion. I think it's the person. I don't know if geography has anything to do with it. I think it really goes back to the person. But there are communities, there are cities across the country that are really tackling this issue and saying, how do we not only rebrand our police department, but also how do we keep our resources in our city? So a lot of city officials are looking at it from a financial perspective. We're hiring officers to then take their resources to live outside of the city, and they're paying taxes in another city, and they're shopping in another city, and they're buying houses in another city. Yeah. And so we're paying them a check in our city, and they're taking their resources and living somewhere else. So a lot of cities are saying, you know what, how can we create incentives in our departments where the people that we hire also want to live in the city they work for? Awesome.
Dr. Lewis, as a mentor, because you mentored hundreds of students and I've witnessed it myself, and you being who you are at your capacity at the college that you work at Southeast Florida, in that region, same question. How do you feel about police officers working in that actual vicinity? Do you think that working in this municipality they live in, do you think that would make an actual difference because maybe they understand the demographic much better?
I'm with Ms. Morton on this. I'm a little bit on the fence because I think that the motivation behind it initially is to keep economic resources in the municipality. But I also believe that, because I also serve on the African American Council in the city of Hollywood, that I also think that police officers should also be required to have some sort of vested community ties to the community in which they police in, whether it be through a police athletic league or whether it be through an advisory council and things of that nature. That part of their job should be saying, okay, how am I connected to the community, listening to the community's concerns? Because when I talked about the revolution being televised, but now it's being documented,
right.
I know that there's a disconnect when I could watch a video of a 61-year-old white man drag police officers in his car and not come away with a scratch. But then I could also see someone have a knee on their neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds and they're handcuffed. Or someone saying they can't breathe. Or someone says, or even if someone's running, that you said, okay, we're gonna shoot. Or we're gonna shoot someone and not know the difference between a gun and a taser for being on the job for 20 plus years. I think that living in the city may not be just the only remedy, but I think really being vested in the community through the requirement of your job, saying I need to be connected with the school boards or the community boards and really understand and hear the voices of the community so I could really be a part of that community. Because if I see a video where I know you would be coming to my funeral if police officers were attached to my pickup truck and I was dragging them down the street driving. No doubt you'd be coming to my funeral.
We both have a double casket.
I'm sorry?
It'd be a double casket.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt. And
it wouldn't work.
So I think that the living in the community, of course, it would serve the community from an economic standpoint. But I think that if you don't value life or don't value who you serve, it makes no difference where one lives. But I think that if you're vested and connected to the community and knowing what's going on in that community, listening to the voices of that community, and let those voices hear you as well, I think that can make, from a better standpoint of creating a foundation of the dynamic being better between law enforcement and the community in which they serve.
Awesome. Very great response from both of you, because I know President Biden mentioned during his debate that he would love to implement a system where actual therapists or counselors go on site to handle certain issues or circumstances when somebody with a mental illness or someone having a certain type of breakdown who doesn't know how to respond accordingly, maybe because they ran out of meds. It could be anything. Could get on site. I believe we should serve notice to make sure that that gets implemented, because that may have been something that should have been implemented within the first 100 days other than anything else, because this is a major issue. I also want to say that, gathering from what both of you said, I feel the 6 months may not be suffice. The 6 months in the academy should warrant them now to maybe have some type of training within the local city to now understand and cultivate the mindset of that culture so they know how to serve better. If I can gather what both of you said, and we could surmise that maybe a year of training should be warranted, maybe paid training, that's fine, but where they understand this is this community, this is how they operate in this community, this is the lingo of this community, this is how these people move, this is their mental state, this is their economical background. So you understand you can't approach certain people the same way you've been taught your whole life, because you may not have the same upbringing as that individual. But after you've done the 6 month of hard skills, Miss Lori, you can now get the soft skills developed where you understand what's going on in that municipality, within that region, and get a better understanding. And something you said profound, and we're almost at the end, and it's unfortunate because I know there's so much more that we can say and elaborate on as far as this topic. And there's more to come, because this is an ongoing situation, and I would love to have you back, both of you back, so we can discuss more. And hopefully when we come back, this platform, God willing, and that's my faith, has allowed us to create some type of changes where we can discuss the progress and ongoing progress and things that can continuously take place to help us as far as police brutality, racism, and so forth. You mentioned the Derek Chauvin case. You mentioned what young Dante went through. Dr. Lewis, you mentioned also what's going on, what went on with the other gentleman who drove off. And I estimated, because I watched that clip at least 30 times, and I used my professional judgment, the way he sped off with the adrenaline. That officer was on the car just to make sure he was okay, and it was unbelievable. I estimated he was driving at least 40 to 50 miles per hour. And I know someone personally who got paralyzed after falling off a car that drove only 20 miles per hour. But he decided, let me stay there because I want to make sure this gentleman was okay or is okay. I believe I'm a bit betwixt, and we're gonna end with this. And I would love for you both to give your all in this, as you all have been doing, and you both been doing. With these officers going to trial, and I'm very scared. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people are calling it the George Floyd case. It's not George Floyd on trial. George Floyd, unfortunately, is not with us to be on trial and testify. The only testimony we have of him is when he said he couldn't breathe and then he went home. Can you both elaborate and provide insight on what you think as far as police officers getting, police officers who are involved in shooting individuals, using excess force? An officer who says, I've been in the force for 26 years. My right side holds the gun because I'm right-handed. My left side holds the taser. But for some reason, that particular day, I must have done a switcheroo. I don't know, because I own a gun myself, and I understand how the weight feels, okay? And I own it for protection purpose. You don't just walk around and say, hey, here's my gun. But I would love to hear from you both as far as, because I'm scared to watch the Derek Chauvin case, because I'm afraid to hear you've been acquitted. I'm afraid to hear your sentence has been lowered and you only get a measly 2 years or maybe probation. Can you both provide insight on how these officers should be reprimanded? What should their consequence be? Should they be consequenced or tried as civilians in the same like manner? Should there be fairness between a police officer who uses excess force on an individual who blatantly says, "I can't breathe," and then goes a step further and calls for his mother? You would think there would be some type of empathy at that point in time, but there was none. In fact, he looked at those who were watching him to show them, and what? And then you look at other cases that are taking place. What can you say as far as what do you think is going on? And we can get into that for a little bit. With Derek's case and multiple cases you can reference that has occurred. What do you think may be the outcome, your fears, and what should really honestly happen to police officers who engage in these shootings and are acquitted? Floor is open to any of you. Please, like they say in church, have your way.
Oh, I'll go first. Let me just say that I believe in laws, right? Just kind of understanding my background. My father was chief of homicide with the state attorney's office for nearly 30 years, was the assistant state attorney for Broward County for several years before retiring. So I come from a family of prosecutions, right? And putting people away, but justifiably so, right? Justifiably so. So when we talk about what the repercussions and consequences of police officers should be, I really do believe that we have to take it case by case. So with the Derek Chauvin case, I'm very concerned, as you are, Dr. Fabre. I'm very concerned. I'm nervous for what could happen if they come back with a not guilty verdict. I'm afraid for us as a country,
right?
And where this is going to take us. So I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. But as it relates to police officers, I think when you look at and again, believing in reform, reform takes time. And when I talk about reform, I'm talking about looking at their policies, looking at their internal procedures, looking at their review board. How are officers reviewed and by whom are they reviewed? Because right now, for most departments, it's an internal review board. So it's police officers policing other officers. Mm-hmm. And we know now that is not working well. So that needs to be reevaluated and that needs to be changed. Right? So if it has to be a combination of both those, on the force and civilians who meet certain qualifications, I am absolutely an advocate and proponent for that. Absolutely. Because I think we have to take it solely out of the police departments and involve some other people in terms of evaluating these cases. But I do believe it needs to be a case-by-case basis. I understand that police officers have an incredibly difficult job to do. I'm grateful for the jobs that they do, and I understand that they have to make decisions within seconds.
Right.
I do understand that. But also, again, understanding that when you sign up for this position, when you go into this field, you go into it understanding that a bad day could cost someone's life.
Right. And
that there are consequences for that. And so again, I believe in more training. I believe in evaluations. I believe in giving them all the tools and resources to make them successful. But I also believe at the end of the day, they have to be accountable.
Absolutely. Well said. And I agree with you, Dr. Lewis. I know you're going to have some more to add to that. There's something you said, Ms. Morton, that is profound. When you mentioned that police officers should be consequenced, I do believe a lot of them feel like they're above the law, and they have that mindset where whatever they do, and some of them approach us in that manner. And the biggest issue I'm having with this is the fact that they do have to police. It just seems like they're more at ease when they're dealing with their own Caucasian or fellow white brothers of theirs. their approach is more like, I'm going to make sure you live through this one. But when they approach us, it's like I'm going to provoke you so you don't live through this one. And it's just so scary watching these circumstances and how they approach us in many instances. Dr. Lewis, can you please provide your insight and what you think as far as that same topic that we're discussing, as far as should they be consequenced? Police officers, should they be given the same type of trials as civilians when they commit these shootings or engage in these shootings, especially unrightful shootings?
Okay, sorry about the mute button. Okay, I think that we're all trained professionals here. We're not law enforcement professionals. You know, currently we're all education professionals, and we're all held to a standard as to what we have to meet to do our jobs well. And if we don't meet that standard, then we're subject to the consequences of not meeting that standard.
Right.
And depending on what happens or what happened or what one's accused of, the consequences could be civil as far as losing one's employment, or it could be criminal depending on what has happened. And we signed up for that. No one came to see Dr. Fabre or Miss Morton or even myself. No one came to our house and said, you must be trained in this field and do this job. We all we interviewed for our jobs. We interviewed to be in this profession. So we have to know those consequences that come with that. I feel that when you look at the structure with police unions, their collective bargaining agreements, their review boards, certainly it should definitely be a more civilian review board that should be intermixed with that. So there's a level of accountability that says that you're not the law. You're an agent of the laws that are being enforced, but you are not the law in and of itself. And if there's civilians and there's people that are there that are going to be part of the accountability process, that may be part of stemming the tide to say, let's change this around as far as what is going on and what's happening.
Right.
I think that when we're looking at the Chauvin trial, I remember the Rodney King trial. I was an undergrad in college when that happened in New York, and even in New York, and the trial was happening in California, the repercussions went wide and across the entire country.
Yeah.
I feel like right now we're in a lose-lose situation. I think that if there's a conviction, I think that there'll be some of us that'll feel that, okay, we're at the mountaintop and we're going on the other side, which I don't think one trial will do that. If there's an acquittal or there's a lessening of the charges, I get the feeling like, yes, I feel like our worst realizations are manifested, but I think the reality of what we know as to where we're living or how we're living, I think that's the reality whether there's an acquittal or a conviction anyway, because it's just one case.
Right.
But I think that if we're looking at the way we re-engineer the system, certainly there should be more a civilian oversight, because at the end of the day, you know, we're paying the salaries. Our property taxes and our sales taxes go towards paying these policemen and police women's salaries. And certainly it's not a matter of persecuting or going after them. It's just holding them accountable, because to Ms. Morton's point, if we have a bad day at work, we live to fight another day.
Right.
We live to see another day. At work, in a law enforcement capacity dealing with the public, if you have a bad day, that can mean someone's life. And no matter how many sorries I say, no matter how many thoughts and prayers I give to someone, no matter how I thought it was this but not that, I say, that life is gone permanently, forever.
Right.
And I think when those stakes are that high, I think that the training has to be high, the accountability has to be high, because this is life and death, literally life and death.
Right.
So certainly a civilian control board or more civilian influence and really having that accountability could be a good start. Do I think it will change everything? No, but I think it's just a good start.
Awesome. And both of you mentioned something as far as the outcome of the Chauvin case. I honestly feel, again, we all have the same sentiments as far as what we fear. Do you think now, if he's found innocent, not guilty, what message would you like to give to Black America on a just in case basis? And again, I'm a man of faith. I believe that God's will be done. No matter what his will is, I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe there's an experience through everything. I believe that there's always something he puts us through because he wants to build us for the next phase of life. Can you provide, both of you provide some words of encouragement to our communities, to those who are watching in Black America, to avoid being so reactive? And that happened to us because we have been reacted upon for centuries. So now when we're reactive, it's a problem. But you don't understand, it's in my bloodstream to be reactive because you used to beat my peeps. So what can we say to the viewers, those of us who are watching, those who are watching all over, as far as words of encouragement for us to keep faith, for us to keep silence, for us to keep peace, for us to use other weapons of mass destruction to respond, weapons of destruction, not to destroy community, but weapons to educate ourselves more, weapons to get more involved, active in activism without violence. What message would you say as a finale that you would like to provide to our people, to as far as if any of these cases to come, whether it's Dante's case, whether it's Derek's case, whatever have you, what would you say, or I should say the police officer who killed Dante, because again, he doesn't have a case, unfortunately. What would we say as words of encouragement, peace, Shiloh peace, shalom peace, to our people that would allow them to use different ways to approach this? Even if we riot, but there's a way we riot where our message is received, and there will be no other choice but change. Because we know we live in a country that's built off of demonstrations, and those demonstrations have killed a whole nation, a whole ethnicity, for them to be who they are. Truth of the matter is. But what would you say? What would both of you say? And as a final thought, you would love to say to our communities to encourage if it doesn't work out in our favor?
Well, again, I'll go first. The first thing I would say is, we come from a lineage of people who are survivors. Surviving is in our blood. Thriving is in our blood. We are still here, regardless of all of the laws and policies that have been put in place. We are still here. We're still here. We're still having this conversation, but we're still here to have it, right? So I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged by the fact that I come from ancestors who are resilient. And so that makes me resilient as well. So we're a resilient people, regardless of what happens to us. We are resilient. We're gonna be okay. But the other thing I'd like to share is to not get distracted.
Right.
So whatever comes down, whatever happens, whatever the decision is, we cannot afford to get distracted. So we feel what we feel, but we get up and we fight another day.
Right.
And when I say fight, I'm not talking about necessarily just, the marching and, the picketing and the rioting, all that stuff, but I'm talking about fighting in terms of legislation and having federal policies changed in our favor. So we can't afford to get so distracted over here that we're not mindful of the policies that are being implemented to keep us further down over here.
Right.
So I just want to remind us to not get distracted.
Absolutely. Voting for the right officials, putting the right people in office,
Right.
not allowing these outcomes to make us feel like our work and efforts are in vain.
Absolutely. Because most cities and communities, you're voting for your police chief. You're voting for these people that are creating laws that impact you on a very personal and daily basis. And so the power of our vote, understanding not just the power of our vote, but donating to candidates. Campaigns cost money. So as a people, we've got to make the transition from just voting to sponsoring and donating to candidates and putting our candidates in place and financing them so that they have a chance to win. So we can't afford to get distracted. We understand the game now, and we've got to play it and play it well.
Right. Well said. Understanding the game and not getting distracted. Very well said. Thank you so much, Ms. Morton. Dr. Lewis, please.
I think to build on Ms. Morton's point is really knowing that we as a people have to make sure that politics is not part of something that we do every 4 years when the president is being elected. Politics is an action that we have to participate in and be part of every single day. I sit, whenever we meet as an African American council, we sit in the city chambers of Hollywood, and we've said to city commissioners, you know what, this is what it is that we need. You see TV, you see people protesting, you see people that live in the community, those are votes. And what we have to make sure that we remind our politicians, our legislators, is that you're a public servant, which means you work for us. That means that if you don't do what it is that we need to have done, the same way we voted you in, we will vote you out. And we will put someone in that will sit there and say, you know what? If there's going to be a law enforcement agency, make sure that their laws have changed to make sure that the laws are enforced are laws that are reflective of the public safety and the needs of our community, because we live in this community, because we are the community. Absolutely. So no matter what happens, whether it's an acquittal, whether it's a conviction, and whether it's an acquittal or conviction in other cases that unfortunately, we're going to have more cases like this. Right. But we have to make sure that we, as a community, turn our politicians into public servants, because they serve us. Absolutely. And if we don't want to support them, then we put ourselves on the ballot so we continue to serve the public. And to say we are going to institute laws that are serving the community, the interest of everyone in the community. And that is a power that can never be taken away by anybody. We have that power to continue to stay, so that when things happen in our favor, we're happy with that and we solidify that. But when things happen that are not in our favor, we say, okay, as a public servant, your services are no longer required because we are voting you out. We're putting someone in, or we're going to put ourselves in to be the advocates for our community.
And I like the idea of putting ourselves in, because maybe some of us do need to get into these political offices or places in our municipalities where we are able to cast these votes, or changes, I should say, because we need people to sponsor us or whatever have you. Listen, I cannot express enough. Like I told the people today that they were in for a treat, and I meant it. And as you all can see, I brought my ammunition with me. I brought my brother and my sister with me. And these aren't just people who are in the industry, but these are people who are passionate about our advancement, our progress, and our continued success. I can't thank you enough, Miss Lori Morton and Dr. Lewis, for being on the show Qualified. And I just want to remind everybody, no matter what happens, no matter where you are, no matter what has happened in your past, remember that you are still qualified to win under any and all circumstances. God bless all of you, and I love you all. Peace.
Thank you. Much love.
Much love.
Today, to all of my qualifiers, my family, my friends, I want to take this moment to thank you all for watching this podcast. We have more to come every Thursday at 6 p.m. Expect to get some new material, new content that we will be sharing. We'll be covering all types, all sorts of topics. Don't miss out. Listen, follow us, subscribe. Do all that you got to do. Subscribe to our YouTube page. What are you waiting for? Let's get it done. Let's do this together. Share, comment, provide all the insight that you have. Let us share and learn from each other respectfully and with love. One more thing. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. I am drg.fab. Also on Facebook, Dr. George Fabre. And don't forget to like our page. And also, if you want this merchandise, you want all these apparel, merchandise, and all of the things that we have to offer. Our book, The Controversy of Divorce and Remarriage. Don't forget to go to drgeorgefabre.com. Again, drgeorgefabre.com. I appreciate and love all of you all. See you next week, 6 p.m. Peace.